episode 3. Hey, welcome everybody to Behind the Lens, episode number 3, and welcome to what will be the Behind the Lens studio. It's getting there, just rather slowly at the moment. Don't ask me to come around and do any DIY for you because I hate it. So that's probably why it's taking a little bit longer, because if I get any excuse not to do it, then I don't do it. Anyway, for today's episode, we're not going to be inside, we're not going to be in the studio. I'm going to take you to the garden, so let's go. Quick tour of the humble abode. Don't walk down the stairs and film yourself, by the way, health and safety tip. So, let's learn how to levitate. Now, the important thing to remember here is to get your settings correct. This has to be done in manual focus because there are certain parameters that you don't want to change during the swap out of you, yourself, being levitated, and the background. They have to be consistent. So the most important thing is your focus and also your white balance. You do not want that white balance to shift in between takes. Get our blanks. So we are back from the garden and we are in the fun bit now. We are editing the pictures that we managed to take. So we're going to dive straight into Lightroom and I'll take you through the process of taking a guy sat on a table in the back garden to looking like it's actually levitating. Let's go. So you can see here straight away on Lightroom, we've pulled through the 10 images that we took in the garden. Nothing particularly special at the moment, are they? 3 different poses, going face forward, 2 different poses lying down, and then simply our blank shots. So what we need to do first is select the one that we particularly want to work with. That's going to be simple because I do not like that one. I think it's probably going to be that one because it's moodier. That one I don't like because of the fingers, so let's get rid of the remaining poses. We'll go back to the lying out levitation another time. Background images, we want to make sure that it's as close as possible. Now you'll immediately notice why I said it was important to keep the white balance set, because even with the white balance set, you can see that there is a difference between this image here, just look at the lighting, and this image here. It's a little bit lighter because of the lighting of the day. changed. So that's an issue that we're going to have to deal with later. But for now, at least everything's in focus. We want to choose the background image which has got the least amount of difference in terms of the grass movement and the trees. Levitation is much better suited to a environment where you haven't got a lot of movement other than the main subject. So if you're in an environment that's particularly windy and trees are blowing, or clouds are going across the environment, or the grass is moving, then the difference in that between the image with your model and the image of just the plain background is going to be quite substantial and will cause more problems and just make the whole thing not look particularly slick or great. So we'll go with these two images that we've got here. Okay, now what we want to do is we want to take our model image and we want to make that as good as we can possibly make it. So we're going to grade it now, and then we will replicate those changes over to the background image. Now the first thing I'm going to do here is crop in, one, to make it friendly for social media, and then secondly because we've got a lot of grass and we've got a lot of sky that we just quite simply don't need. And also we want to make sure on a grid, it's always best to use a grid, that your subject is in the center of the frame. Okay, so that will do. Now let's get working. So you can see it's a little bit dark now. Unfortunately we've got a lot of contrast between a blank grey sky, not the best conditions to take these sort of photos, and the foreground. Now we can up the exposure, but that is done at the risk of blowing out the sky, but we can rectify that very quickly. So exposure's going up. Contrast, we want to leave a bit of contrast in there. Now highlights, because of the sky, you want to take those highlights all the way down, and you can see that's already had an effect on how much the sky is blowing out. Shadows, we can bring those up so we can see the main image. Whites, we're going to nudge up slightly, but not too much, again because of the sky. And then blacks we're going to take in pretty much the opposite direction. Clarity, we do not want to go all the way up on this because I just think it just looks a little bit unrealistic. Depends what your personal preference is though, to be perfectly honest, when it comes to clarity. I'm going to take this about halfway, so we're going to go for around 50. And dehaze, this is going to calm the sky down and just break out those highlights a little bit more. Okay, now I think we can probably get away with raising the exposure just a tad more. Okay, I'm fairly happy with that. It will give us something to work with. Look at that moody face. Okay, so we are going to take that image, select our background image, and we're going to sync those changes over to the background image. Okay, so making sure everything here is ticked. Spot removal we don't need to worry about. Synchronize the images. Okay, and now our background image has got the same alterations you'll see down the right hand side as our foreground image. So as it stands, we're going to select both of these images and we are going to edit in Photoshop. And if you've got a laptop as old as mine, that will take about 7 years to actually open. So I think we'll skip forward in this bit, and when you come back, we'll be straight into Photoshop. Okay, so we are back and we're going to dive straight into Photoshop where we have our two images, as you can see. Now, the first thing we want to do is be able to move this image here and take that and dump that on top of this image here as a separate layer. So we go down to the layer, we unlock it by clicking on the little padlock. We then, with our move tool, which is the arrows up here, grab this image, drag it up to our main image, just see it switch over there, and we will quite simply dump it on top. You'll see the little plus sign now. If I release the mouse button, it will dump in as a new layer, which you can see in the bottom right hand corner. So we will then make sure we've got these perfectly lined up. This is why it's good for these sort of shots that you need to use a tripod so that nothing moves, because otherwise you'll spend a lot of time aligning the photos. It's pretty much impossible without the use of a tripod. There we go, that looks good. We will unlock our layer 0 and we will drag that to the top. Okay, now what I want to do now is just make sure that everything is lined up and even, so the fence panels match, there's just no movement there. So I'm going to take the opacity of the top image down, and in theory I should just become a ghost and there should be no movement anywhere else. What we need to do now is make that table disappear. So we do that by the following. We want to go down to the bottom right and create a layer mask by clicking the little add vector mask icon. I don't know what you call that really, it looks like a little, I've always called it almost a camera. Okay, we want to make sure that we have a foreground of black and a background of white. Little tip for you here, black conceals, white reveals. Just remember that when you're using Photoshop, it will save you a lot of time and hassle. Okay, so we now need to select the brush tool. So now there are a couple of ways to do this. I'm showing you the way that I tend to personally do this when it comes to floating images, floating objects, or levitating people. And we are going to zoom in so we can see what we're doing. Maybe not that close, I think that's probably about right. And we, with our brush tool selected again, are going to slowly start painting out the table. Now, a couple of things to remember. One, up on your setting, you want your opacity at 100% so you can see the removal. You also want this brush, use whatever brush you feel, but you want the brush hardness to be pretty high. I'm actually going to change it, so I'm going to actually take it up to 100%. And then it's purely a case of patience and very carefully removing all of the elements that you do not want to see in the final image. Nice small brush because you do not want to be particularly wide on this. Now, one thing that you will notice is it's leaving kind of a ghosting, it's leaving kind of a shadow. Now the reason it's doing that is because the background image, the underlayer, is slightly lighter than the top image. So we're going to need to fix that at some point, but don't worry about it for now, just get rid of that table. We'll probably speed this bit up a bit. It takes a little bit of time, and it really is. If you want the image to look good, it's worth taking your time. You're in no rush. We're in lockdown in the UK. You've got all the time in the world. The longer you take, the more accurate you are, the better your final image will look. So we've got an image, and you can see what I mean about the ghosting effect because of the change in light. That's why it's so critical to make sure that your lighting is as even as possible. The reason we've got the issue here is that it was a cloudy day, then it was a sunny day, then it was a cloudy day, and the light was just changing so quickly that even in between shots, the lighting setup had changed, and as much as you set the white balance to hold its position, you can't really counteract that. But as I say, there are ways of fixing it. So we've got the image we want to work with. We'll select that layer and we're going to save that back into Lightroom. So we go File, click Save. That will then go back into Lightroom. We will then delete these images from Photoshop, and we will then re-import our edited image back into Photoshop to get rid of that ghosting. Huzzah! There we go. Okay, so let's unlock this and we'll start working on it. We want to zoom in to where our ghost table appears. There she is. Does look quite strange, doesn't it? As I say, we really want to get rid of this because it completely wrecks the image. So don't be afraid of zooming right in here because we want to work nice and tight. Probably not that tight. Let's back up one. Okay, you are going to take your lasso tool and you want to do this section by section. So let's just select this little bit of post and corner of the fence here. And then we will go up to Edit, Fill, and you want to make sure you have got Content Aware selected here. You want to make sure the mode is normal, 100% opacity, color adaptation, hit OK, and bingo. You will notice how much more darker and how much more akin to its surroundings that section of the photo is gone. So we then go Control D to deselect, and we will carry on section by section until we are happy. Again, this will take some time, so we'll do this one here and then I will speed us through. Okay, so again, just like rubbing out the image, the Content Aware is a really powerful tool for all your photos. If you want to remove something, some people on a beach that you don't want to be there or something like that, it's a great little tool. But it's worth taking your time, section by section. If you choose a whole big block, it can make things get a little bit muddy. But here we go. We are left with our final image, and I think you can see we're pretty much levitating there, especially with the way that the laces are dropping down. So we are going to save this image into Lightroom again, and just like that, the ghosting is gone. And we are left now with the wonders of Photoshop with an image that I think you can say pretty much looks like we're levitating. So, hope you all enjoyed today's tutorial. That was Behind the Lens episode number 3. We are back every Sunday. Please support what we're doing by hitting the subscribe button, and we will see you very soon. Just stay safe in lockdown, and by the time that it is all over and it's all back to normal, at least you'll have some new things to do, and you can practice all this at home as well. Cheers.